I am Rachel Martinez, and for 28 years, I lived in the shadow of my perfect sister Amanda. The night everything changed started like any other family dinner, until my mother said those devastating words that shattered something inside me forever. What she did not know was that I had been secretly building something that would turn our entire family dynamic upside down. When she sneered, "You will never be as good as your sister," in front of everyone, she had no idea she was talking to the woman who had just closed the biggest real estate deal in our city's history. The silence that followed my response was deafening, and what happened next changed everything between us forever. If you have ever been the forgotten child, the one always compared to someone else, this story will show you exactly how I turned the tables and got the ultimate revenge. But before we continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you are watching this video from. Growing up in Riverside, California, our family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Miguel Martinez, worked as a mechanical engineer at Boeing, bringing home a steady six-figure income that afforded us a beautiful four-bedroom house in the suburbs. My mother, Patricia, was a high school math teacher who ran our household with military precision, every meal planned, every schedule optimized, every surface spotless. And then there was Amanda, my sister, 3 years older and absolutely flawless in every conceivable way. With her naturally straight black hair, olive skin that never broke out, and an intellect that seemed effortless, Amanda was everything our Mexican-American parents had dreamed their daughter would become. She sailed through advanced placement classes, captained the volleyball team, played violin in the school orchestra, and somehow managed to maintain a social life that included dating the student body president. Meanwhile, there was me. 5 feet 2 inches of awkward energy, with curly hair that refused to behave, and a face full of freckles that made me look younger than my 15 years. My grades hovered around B- level. Not terrible, but certainly not impressive when constantly measured against Amanda's straight A+ average. I was not athletic, not musical, and definitely not popular. What I was, however, was determined, though nobody seemed to notice that particular quality. The comparison started early and never stopped. Every report card became an opportunity for my mother to sigh and say, "Amanda was already taking honors courses by your age." Every school event became a chance to reminisce about Amanda's achievements. Every conversation with relatives included updates on Amanda's latest accomplishments, followed by awkward silence about my own life. I remember the exact moment I realized I would never measure up. It was Amanda's senior year, and she had just been accepted to UCLA with a full academic scholarship. Our living room filled with congratulatory flowers, cards, and visitors who came to celebrate the Martinez family's success story. I was a sophomore then, struggling with chemistry and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. That evening, as I helped clean up after the celebration, I overheard my mother on the phone with her sister. "Amanda has always been special," she said, her voice full of pride. "From the moment she could walk, we knew she was destined for greatness. She is going to be a lawyer, just like we always hoped. Now Rachel, well, she is a different story. We are hoping she will at least graduate high school without too much trouble." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, holding a stack of dirty plates, feeling something inside me harden. That night, I made a promise to myself that would drive everything I did for the next 13 years. I would prove them all wrong, but not in the way they expected. The summer after Amanda graduated high school, I got my first job working at Century 21 Real Estate as a filing clerk. While other kids my age were at the mall or hanging out at the beach, I spent my days organizing property files, answering phones, and watching the agents work. Most people saw it as a boring summer job, but I saw it as an education. Janet Morrison, the top-selling agent at the office, took me under her wing. She was a 40-something woman who had built her career through sheer determination after her husband left her with 2 young children. Janet did not have a college degree, but she understood people, understood what they wanted, and most importantly, understood how to close deals. "Real estate is not about the houses, Rachel," she told me one afternoon as we drove to a listing appointment. "It is about understanding what people really need, what they are afraid of, and how to make them feel confident about the biggest purchase of their lives. You have got good instincts for reading people. That is worth more than any degree." While Amanda was settling into her freshman year at UCLA, studying pre-law and joining sorority, I was learning the real estate business from the ground up. I watched Janet negotiate deals, handle difficult clients, and navigate the complex world of mortgages, inspections, and closing procedures. By the end of that summer, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. My parents were less than thrilled when I announced my intention to get my real estate license as soon as I turned 18. Real estate? My mother said, her eyebrows raised in that familiar expression of disappointment. Rachel, that is not a real career. That is something people do when they cannot do anything else. You should focus on getting into a good college like your sister. But I was done caring about their approval. The day after my 18th birthday, I enrolled in real estate licensing courses while finishing my senior year of high school. I studied contracts and property law while my classmates worried about prom dates and graduation parties. I memorized market trends and financing options while Amanda called home with stories about her college adventures and her new boyfriend, a pre-med student named David. By graduation day, I had my license in hand and a job offer from Janet to join her team as a junior associate. My parents attended the ceremony, of course, but their congratulations felt hollow. All the conversation afterwards centered on Amanda's summer internship at a prestigious law firm in Los Angeles and her plans to apply for law school. That night, as I packed away my cap and gown, I made another promise to myself. I would not just succeed in real estate, I would dominate it. And someday, when I had built something bigger than Amanda ever dreamed of, I would make sure everyone knew exactly what they had overlooked. At 19, while Amanda was completing her sophomore year at UCLA and dating her pre-med boyfriend, I sold my first house. It was a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a working-class neighborhood, and my commission was only $1,200. But holding that check in my hands felt better than any grade I had ever received. Janet taught me everything she knew about the business, but I was hungry to learn more. I spent my evenings reading real estate investment books, studying market analysis, and networking with other agents, lenders, and contractors. While my former classmates were partying at community college or working retail jobs, I was building relationships that would serve me for decades. My breakthrough came during my second year in the business when I landed a listing for a luxury home in the hills overlooking the city. The owners were getting divorced and needed to sell quickly. Most agents would have simply listed it and waited, but I saw an opportunity. I researched the buyer pool, identified 3 potential purchasers before the house even hit the market, and orchestrated a bidding war that resulted in a sale price $50,000 above asking. The commission from that single sale was more than my father made in 2 months. I used every penny to invest in my business: better marketing materials, professional photography, a sleek new website, and most importantly, continuing education courses that taught me about commercial real estate and investment properties. By my 21st birthday, I was outselling agents with decades of experience. I had developed a reputation for being able to move difficult properties and negotiate deals that other agents could not close. My client list included successful business owners, doctors, and even a few minor celebrities who had relocated to our growing city. Meanwhile, Amanda was thriving at UCLA. She had been accepted to law school and was planning her wedding to David, who had secured a residency at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. My parents could not stop talking about their upcoming wedding, the medical career David was launching, and the bright future that awaited their perfect daughter and her perfect husband. The contrast between our lives became a constant source of tension during family gatherings. While Amanda shared stories about law school clinics and wedding planning, I talked about property investments and market trends. My parents listened politely to my successes, but their eyes glazed over when I explained complex real estate deals. They understood Amanda's path: college, professional school, prestigious career, but my entrepreneurial journey mystified them. "When are you going to settle down and think about starting a family?" my mother asked during one particularly awkward Sunday dinner. "Amanda and David are already talking about having children after she finishes law school. You are 21, Rachel. You should be thinking about finding a nice young man instead of working all the time." I smiled and changed the subject, but inside, I felt that familiar fire building. Let them think I was just selling houses. They had no idea what I was really building. At 23, I made the decision that would change everything. Instead of just selling real estate, I started buying it. Every commission check went toward building my investment portfolio. I started small, purchasing a duplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood and learning to be a landlord. The rental income covered the mortgage and generated a small profit, but more importantly, it gave me first-hand experience in property management and real estate investment. Janet Morrison had moved on to open her own brokerage, and she offered me a partnership position that I eagerly accepted. Morrison and Martinez Real Estate opened its doors on a Tuesday morning in March, with me as the youngest partner in any real estate firm in the city. I was 24 years old and owned half of a growing business. That same month, Amanda graduated from law school and accepted a position at a mid-sized firm in Los Angeles, starting at $75,000 per year. The family celebration lasted an entire weekend, with relatives flying in from across the country to congratulate the first Martinez to become a lawyer. I attended the parties, smiled at the appropriate moments, and bit my tongue when people asked what I was still doing with that real estate thing. What they did not know was that my real estate investments were already generating more passive income than Amanda's new salary. I owned 4 properties by then: the original duplex, a small apartment building with 6 units, a commercial space that I leased to a growing tech startup, and a house in the historic district that I had renovated and was preparing to flip. The house flip was my masterpiece. I had purchased it for $85,000, spent $30,000 on renovations, and listed it for $165,000. The profit margin was substantial, but more importantly, the project taught me about construction, renovation, and the high-end market. During Amanda's wedding planning process, I quietly closed the biggest deal of my career to that point: a luxury development project where I represented both the seller and buyer in a $2.3 million transaction. My commission was substantial enough to purchase 2 more investment properties and establish a healthy cash reserve. Amanda's wedding was everything my parents had dreamed of: elegant, expensive, and attended by David's impressive family of doctors and business owners. I stood in the receiving line in my bridesmaid dress, congratulating guests and accepting compliments about how beautiful the ceremony was. Several people asked what I did for work, and when I mentioned real estate, they nodded politely and moved on to more interesting conversations. What none of them realized was that I had paid for my own bridesmaid dress, travel expenses, and wedding gift with money from my latest property sale. At 25, I was financially independent while my sister was still paying off law school loans and living in a 1-bedroom apartment in West Hollywood. But I kept these facts to myself. My real triumph would come later, when I could reveal everything at once. While Amanda and David settled into married life in their expensive Los Angeles apartment, struggling to make ends meet on his resident salary and her entry-level lawyer income, I was quietly building an empire. By my 26th birthday, I owned 12 properties across the city and surrounding areas. My portfolio included single-family rentals, a small office building, 2 retail spaces, and an apartment complex that I had purchased at auction and renovated. The key to my success was staying under the radar. I formed an LLC called Martinez Holdings to manage my investments, which allowed me to maintain privacy about my growing wealth. My parents knew I was doing well in real estate, but they assumed I was still just selling houses and maybe renting out a property or 2. They had no idea that I was developing into one of the largest private property owners in the region. My business partnership with Janet continued to flourish. Morrison and Martinez. Real estate had become one of the top firms in the city, with 15 agents working under our guidance and a reputation for handling the most complex and valuable transactions. Janet focused on residential sales while I specialized in commercial and investment properties, a division of labor that played to both our strengths. The commercial side of the business brought me into contact with successful entrepreneurs, established business owners, and wealthy investors who became both clients and mentors. Through these relationships, I learned about tax strategies, wealth building, and the importance of discretion when accumulating significant assets. One particularly valuable mentor was Robert Chen, a successful businessman who had built a chain of restaurants and was expanding into real estate development. Robert taught me about leveraging assets, using debt strategically, and the tax advantages of real estate investment. More importantly, he introduced me to a network of high-net-worth individuals who became both clients and co-investors in larger deals. During this period, Amanda was working 60-hour weeks at her law firm, trying to prove herself worthy of partnership consideration. She and David had purchased a small condo in Santa Monica, stretching their budget to live in a desirable area. Their social media posts showed a glamorous lifestyle, but I knew from family conversations that they were living paycheck to paycheck, with most of Amanda's salary going toward law school loans and the mortgage on their overpriced home. My parents continued to hold Amanda up as the success story of the family. Every phone call included updates about her latest case, her performance reviews, or her and David's social activities. Meanwhile, my growing business success was acknowledged with polite interest before the conversation inevitably turned back to Amanda's achievements. The irony was not lost on me. While everyone celebrated Amanda's traditional markers of success, I was accumulating real wealth through my supposedly less prestigious career choice. But I remained patient, knowing that the right moment for revelation would come. By 27, my success had become impossible to ignore completely. Morrison and Martinez Real Estate was named Commercial Brokerage of the Year by the local business journal, and I was featured in a prominent article about young entrepreneurs in the region. The article mentioned my property investments and estimated my net worth, though the published figure was conservative compared to the actual numbers. My father saw the article first and called me with genuine pride in his voice. "Mija, I had no idea you were doing so well," he said. "This article makes it sound like you are quite successful." For the first time in years, I heard real respect in his voice when he spoke about my career. My mother's reaction was more measured. "It is nice that you are doing well, Rachel," she said during our weekly phone call. "But remember, money is not everything. Amanda may not be making as much right now, but she is building something stable and respectable. Lawyers have job security and social standing. Real estate can be very unpredictable." Her response stung, but I had grown accustomed to her inability to fully acknowledge my achievements. What mattered was that the business community had taken notice. I was invited to join the Chamber of Commerce board, asked to speak at real estate investment seminars, and approached by other business owners seeking my advice on property matters. The recognition opened doors to even larger opportunities. I was approached by a development company to partner on a mixed-use project that would include retail space, offices, and luxury apartments. The project required a significant investment, but it also promised substantial returns and the chance to establish myself as a major player in commercial development. Around the same time, Amanda was passed over for promotion at her law firm. The disappointment was evident during family gatherings, though she tried to maintain her usual confident demeanor. David's residency was demanding and stressful, and their relationship showed signs of strain. They had postponed their plans to start a family due to financial pressures and career demands. The contrast between our situations was becoming more apparent, though my parents seemed determined not to acknowledge it. They continued to frame Amanda's career as more prestigious and stable, even as my business achievements accumulated. I realized that no amount of success would change their fundamental perception of our respective paths. That realization was liberating in a way. I stopped seeking their approval and focused entirely on building my business and investment portfolio. If they wanted to remain blind to my success, that was their choice. But I knew that eventually the truth would become impossible to ignore. The moment of reckoning was approaching faster than any of us realized. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October. Amanda's voice was shaky as she delivered the news that would shatter the perfect image our family had carefully constructed for years. "David and I are getting divorced," she said, barely above a whisper. "He has been having an affair with a nurse at the hospital. I found out last week." The golden couple was falling apart, and with it, all my parents' assumptions about stability and success. Amanda was 28 years old, facing divorce proceedings, and struggling to afford the Santa Monica condo on her lawyer's salary alone. The fairy tale ending they had celebrated was crumbling in real time. My parents went into crisis mode, offering emotional support and financial assistance to help Amanda through the divorce. They invited her to move back home temporarily, converted my old bedroom into a home office where she could work, and generally rallied around their wounded daughter with fierce protectiveness. Meanwhile, I was in the middle of my biggest business triumph yet. The mixed-use development project had broken ground, with me as the primary investor and partner. The local newspaper ran a feature story about the project, highlighting my role as the youngest major developer in the city's history. My investment portfolio had grown to include 23 properties, and my net worth had quietly crossed the seven-figure threshold. But when I tried to share the news about the development project during a family dinner, my mother brushed it aside with distracted acknowledgement. "That is nice, dear," she said, immediately turning her attention back to Amanda. "Now, about the divorce proceedings, have you thought about asking for alimony?" The dismissal stung more than usual, partly because I could see how much pain Amanda was in, but also because I had reached a level of success that objectively dwarfed anything our family had previously achieved, yet it was still treated as secondary to Amanda's personal drama. That night, after Amanda had gone to bed in my former room and my parents were discussing legal strategies and emotional support plans, I sat in my car in their driveway and made a decision. I would continue building my empire, but I would stop sharing my victories with people who were incapable of recognizing them. The next morning, I received a call that would change everything. The city's Economic Development Council was looking for private investors to partner on a major downtown revitalization project. The investment opportunity was substantial, but it came with the potential for enormous returns and significant community impact. I spent the next 3 weeks conducting due diligence, analyzing financial projections, and negotiating terms. By November, I had committed $5 million to the project and secured the position as lead private investor. The deal would make me one of the most influential business owners in the city, and generate returns that would establish generational wealth. But I kept this information to myself, waiting for the right moment to reveal the full scope of what I had accomplished. Amanda's divorce was finalized in February, and she made the decision to move back to our hometown permanently. She had found a position at a small law firm that paid significantly less than her Los Angeles job, but offered better work-life balance and the emotional support of being near family. My parents were thrilled to have their daughter back, and immediately began strategizing about how to help her rebuild her life. The transition was difficult for Amanda, and I genuinely felt sympathy for her situation. Divorce is devastating regardless of the circumstances, and watching her confidence crumble was painful. She had always been so sure of her path, so confident in her choices, that this setback seemed to shake her fundamental sense of identity. My parents threw themselves into supporting Amanda's recovery with the same intensity they had once devoted to celebrating her achievements. They helped her find an apartment, introduced her to eligible bachelors, and constantly reassured her that this was just a temporary setback before her life got back on track. During this period, my business continued to expand at an unprecedented rate. The downtown revitalization project was ahead of schedule and under budget, generating positive media attention and community support. Other developers and investors were taking notice, leading to partnership opportunities and consulting requests that further increased my income and influence. I had also started dating someone seriously for the first time in years. Marcus Thompson was a successful architect who had worked on several of my renovation projects. He was intelligent, ambitious, and most importantly, he understood and respected my career achievements. Our relationship was built on mutual admiration and shared goals, rather than traditional expectations about gender roles and career priorities. But I kept Marcus largely separate from my family interactions, knowing that introducing a boyfriend would only fuel more questions about marriage and family planning that I was not ready to address. My focus remained on business growth and strategic positioning for what I knew would be a pivotal year. The stage was set for a dramatic revelation, though none of my family members saw it coming. They were so focused on Amanda's recovery and rebuilding that they barely noticed my continued success. In their minds, I was still just the younger sister who sold real estate, dependable but unremarkable, successful enough but nothing spectacular. They had no idea that I was about to become the most talked-about business owner in the city, or that their assumptions about success, stability, and family achievement were about to be turned completely upside down. The moment of truth was approaching, and this time, I was ready to claim every bit of recognition I had earned. The announcement came on a Monday morning in March. Martinez Holdings had been selected as the primary development partner for the largest commercial project in the city's history. The waterfront development would include luxury condominiums, retail space, restaurants, and a boutique hotel, with an estimated total value of $48 million. As the lead investor and development partner, I would oversee the entire project and hold majority ownership in the completed development. The local newspaper ran the story on the front page, with my photograph and a detailed profile of my business success. The headline read, "Local Entrepreneur Leads Historic Development Project," and the article traced my journey from teenage real estate agent to major commercial developer. Most shocking to anyone who knew me was the revelation of my net worth, which the business journalist estimated at $12 million based on publicly available property records and business filings. My phone started ringing at 7 in the morning. Reporters, business associates, and congratulatory colleagues called throughout the day. By noon, I had received interview requests from 3 television stations and 2 regional business magazines. The mayor's office called to schedule a lunch meeting to discuss future development opportunities. But the call I was waiting for came at 2:30 in the afternoon. It was my father, and his voice was filled with something I had never heard before when he talked about my career. Genuine awe. "Mija," he said, his voice almost whispering, "I am looking at the newspaper right now. Is this real? Are you really worth $12 million? The newspaper estimate is actually conservative, Dad," I replied calmly. "My accountant puts the actual figure closer to $15 million when you include all assets and ongoing projects." The silence on the other end of the line lasted nearly 30 seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "Rachel, I had no idea. We had no idea. How did you do this? When did this happen?" "I have been building it for 10 years, Dad. Piece by piece, property by property, deal by deal. I tried to tell you about some of the bigger projects, but everyone was always more interested in Amanda's career." My mother called an hour later, her tone a mixture of shock and confusion. "Rachel, people are calling me about this newspaper article. They are saying you are some kind of millionaire businesswoman. I do not understand how this happened without us knowing. It happened because you were not paying attention, Mom, I said, allowing a slight edge to creep into my voice. Every success I tried to share with you was dismissed or overshadowed by whatever Amanda was doing, so I stopped sharing. That evening, Amanda called. Her voice was small and uncertain, so different from the confident sister I had grown up with. Rachel, I read the article. I cannot believe what you have accomplished. I am so proud of you, and I am so sorry I never realized how successful you had become. Her apology was genuine, and I appreciated it more than she could have known. But the real test would come at Sunday dinner, when we were all together for the first time since the news broke. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was tense from the moment I walked through the door. My mother had prepared my favorite meal, which was unusual, and my father kept looking at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. Amanda was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine and a nervous expression. So, my mother said as we sat down to eat, everyone is talking about this newspaper article. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door came over yesterday just to ask if it was really true about your success. It is true, I replied simply, cutting into my chicken. Though I am surprised it comes as such a shock. I have been building this business for over a decade. But we thought you were just selling houses, my father said, his confusion evident. We had no idea you were investing in developing. Why did you not tell us about all of this? The question I had been waiting years to answer hung in the air. I put down my fork and looked around the table at my family. My successful sister, who was rebuilding her life after divorce. My parents, who had spent decades celebrating one daughter while overlooking the other. I tried to tell you, I said, keeping my voice calm and measured. Every time I closed a big deal or bought a new property or reached a milestone in my business, I tried to share it with you. But every conversation was redirected to Amanda's achievements. Every success was minimized or dismissed. So eventually, I stopped trying. That is not fair, my mother protested. We have always been supportive of your career. Supportive? I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Mom, when I told you about my first commercial property purchase, you asked when I was going to stop playing around and get a real job. When I became a business partner at 24, you suggested I should consider going back to school instead. When I was featured in business articles, you changed the subject to Amanda's latest case. The silence at the table was uncomfortable, but I was not finished. For 28 years, I have lived in Amanda's shadow. Every achievement was measured against hers. Every success was qualified with comments about how Amanda's path was more stable or respectable or traditional. Well, guess what? My unstable, disrespectable, non-traditional career has made me one of the wealthiest people in the city. My mother's face was flushing red. Whether from embarrassment or anger, I could not tell. We just wanted what was best for both of you girls. We wanted you to have security and stability. No, I said, standing up from the table. You wanted me to have what you thought was security and stability. You wanted me to follow a path you could understand and explain to your friends. You never bothered to understand what I was actually building or recognize that maybe, just maybe, I knew what I was doing. My father cleared his throat, and I could see he was struggling with something. Rachel, sit down. Please. Your mother and I need to say something. I remained standing, my arms crossed, but I waited for him to continue. We were wrong, he said simply. We have been wrong for years, and we owe you an enormous apology. We let our own assumptions and biases blind us to what you were accomplishing. We treated your career as less important because it was not something we understood, and that was unfair and hurtful. My mother was staring at her plate, her jaw tight. I still do not understand how we did not know about all of this money and success. You did not know because you did not want to know, I replied, finally sitting back down. Every time I tried to explain a complex real estate deal or talk about my investment strategy, your eyes glazed over. It was easier to dismiss what I was doing than to try to understand it. Amanda spoke for the first time since I had arrived. Rachel, I need to apologize too. I knew Mom and Dad were always comparing us, and I should have said something. I should have made more effort to understand your business and support your success. I was so focused on my own career that I never realized how much you were achieving. Thank you, I said to Amanda, meaning it. But this is not about you. This is about Mom and Dad needing to understand that their constant comparisons and dismissals were damaging and wrong. My mother finally looked up from her plate. I suppose I owe you an apology as well. I did not realize how my comments were affecting you. I thought I was being encouraging. Encouraging? The word came out sharper than I intended. Mom, last month when I mentioned the downtown development project, you said, That is nice, dear. But when are you going to settle down and start a family like Amanda? Does that sound encouraging to you? She had the grace to look ashamed. No, it does not. Here is what I need you to understand, I said, leaning forward. I have built something extraordinary. I own more real estate than most people will see in their lifetimes. I employ dozens of people. I am contributing to the economic development of our entire city. And I did it all while you were worrying that I would never be as good as my sister. The phrase hung in the air between us, the unspoken comparison that had driven our family dynamic for decades. Well, my father said quietly, it turns out you were not as good as your sister. You were better, much better. For the first time in years, I felt tears prick at my eyes, not from sadness or frustration, but from the relief of finally being seen for who I truly was. The weeks following that Sunday dinner brought changes I had not expected. My parents made genuine efforts to understand my business, asking detailed questions about my projects and investments. My father even requested financial advice about their retirement planning, acknowledging that I clearly knew more about building wealth than he had realized. My mother's transformation was slower and more complicated. Decades of thinking in terms of traditional career success did not disappear overnight, but she began making small efforts to recognize my achievements. She started mentioning my business success to her friends and even attended the groundbreaking ceremony for the waterfront development project. Amanda and I began rebuilding our relationship as sisters rather than competitors. She was genuinely interested in learning about real estate investment and asked if I might have opportunities for her to get involved as a legal advisor. The dynamic that had defined us since childhood was finally shifting towards something healthier. The business success continued to accelerate. The waterfront project generated media attention that brought opportunities from other cities and states. I was invited to speak at real estate conferences, consulted on municipal development projects, and approached by investment groups seeking partnerships. Marcus and I moved in together, and I finally felt comfortable introducing him to my family as a serious partner. My parents welcomed him warmly, and I could see they were genuinely happy that I had found someone who appreciated and supported my ambitions. But the most satisfying change was internal. The hunger for approval that had driven me for so many years had finally been satisfied. I no longer felt the need to prove my worth to anyone because I had proven it to myself. The empire I had built was not just about money or recognition. It was about demonstrating that there are many different paths to success and fulfillment. 6 months after the newspaper article, I received an unexpected honor. The Chamber of Commerce named me Business Person of the Year, recognizing not just my financial success, but my contributions to community development and job creation. At the awards ceremony, surrounded by the city's most influential business leaders, I felt a sense of achievement that had nothing to do with family comparisons or sibling rivalry. My parents were in the audience that night, beaming with pride as I accepted the award. During my acceptance speech, I talked about the importance of supporting young entrepreneurs and recognizing that success comes in many different forms. I did not mention our family's history of comparisons, but I knew they understood the message. After the ceremony, my mother approached me with tears in her eyes. "I am so proud of you, Rachel," she said, "not just for what you have accomplished, but for who you have become. I am sorry it took me so long to see it." The apology was everything I had ever wanted to hear, but by then, I no longer needed it to feel complete. Today, 5 years after that pivotal Sunday dinner confrontation, Martinez Holdings has grown into a regional development company with projects in 3 states. My net worth has reached levels that still surprise me when I see it written in financial documents. But more importantly, I have built something that will create jobs and opportunities for generations. Amanda has found her own path to happiness and success. She started her own family law practice, specializing in divorce and custody cases, and recently married a wonderful man who appreciates her intelligence and independence. She is expecting her first child, and my parents are over the moon about becoming grandparents. The irony is not lost on me that Amanda is now the one building something from scratch, taking entrepreneurial risks, and working to establish herself in a competitive field. The sister who once followed the traditional path has become the family risk taker, while I have become the established business owner with predictable success. Our relationship is stronger than it has ever been. We have lunch regularly, discuss business strategies, and genuinely enjoy each other's company without the shadow of competition that haunted our childhood. Amanda often tells people that I inspired her to take control of her own career destiny, which means more to me than any financial milestone. My parents have become my biggest advocates and supporters. They attend every ribbon-cutting ceremony, proudly display newspaper articles about my projects, and enthusiastically tell anyone who will listen about their daughter, the successful developer. The transformation has been remarkable, though I sometimes wonder if they truly understand how much pain their earlier dismissals caused. Marcus and I married last year in a ceremony that reflected both our personalities, elegant but not ostentatious, meaningful but not traditional. My parents walked me down the aisle together, and during the reception, my father gave a speech about how proud he was of the woman I had become and the empire I had built through sheer determination. The most meaningful moment came when my mother pulled me aside during the reception. "Rachel," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I need you to know something. For years, I measured success by the wrong standards. I thought achievement meant following a predetermined path, getting the right degrees, choosing the safe career. But you showed me that real success means having the courage to build something entirely your own." She paused, struggling with words that clearly did not come easily. "You were never the daughter I expected you to be. You were so much more than that. You were the daughter I should have celebrated from the beginning." That conversation healed something in me that I had not even realized was still broken. The validation I had once craved so desperately was finally mine, but by then I had learned that the most important validation comes from within. Looking back now, I realize that my mother's constant comparisons, as painful as they were, ultimately drove me to achieve things I might never have attempted if I had been content with their approval. The hunger to prove myself, to show them what they were missing, became the fuel for building something extraordinary. My business empire continues to grow, but these days I am more focused on legacy than accumulation. I have established a scholarship fund for young entrepreneurs from working-class families, providing them with the resources and mentorship I wish I had received earlier in my career. I also serve on the board of several nonprofit organizations focused on women's economic empowerment and small business development. The teenage girl who once felt invisible in her own family has become a woman whose voice carries weight in boardrooms and whose decisions affect entire communities. The journey from overlooked younger sister to regional business leader was not easy, but every challenge, every dismissal, every moment of doubt was worth it for the satisfaction of proving that success cannot be defined by other people's expectations. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not striking back at those who underestimated you. It is becoming so successful that their earlier judgment becomes irrelevant. I did not just prove them wrong. I transcended their ability to judge me at all. If you have ever been the underestimated one, the overlooked sibling, the person whose dreams were dismissed by those who should have supported them, remember this: your path does not have to match anyone else's definition of success. The empire you build from determination and vision will always be more meaningful than the approval you once thought you needed. Have you ever had to prove yourself to family members who constantly compared you to others? How did you find the strength to define success on your own terms? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that they are capable of building something extraordinary, regardless of what others may think. Remember, the best revenge against those who underestimate you is not bitterness or anger. It is becoming so successful that their opinions no longer matter. Build your empire, define your own success, and let your achievements speak louder than any comparison ever could.